Hey and welcome. I'm Hammeh and Overwatch's first novel, The Hero of Numbani, is now out. So this is my shot at a review. I'm going to be going through a brief synopsis of the plot, what I enjoyed, what I thought was really good in the book, a few things that I found kind of interesting as well, some plot points, some lore points, so there are spoilers within. If you want to enjoy it like I did, I think it's really great, and if you enjoy Overwatch Lore, you should certainly go support Nikki Drayden, the author, and get it. And as always, there are time codes in the description below if you want to skip around. So let's get stuck in with a brief synopsis and then onto my thoughts. Firstly, here's a quick synopsis of the story. Efi, with her friends, in the excerpt that we've seen on the Overwatch website, is working on producing more of her Juvies, personal assistant robots, at the beginning of the novel. In the first couple of chapters, we see a whole bunch about Efi's day-to-day life and her feeling of being excluded, of being between two worlds, between the primary school life of her friends and the senior high school life of her further and more advanced international baccalaureate studies. With most of her time outside of school being caught up in terms of inventing, Efi doesn't have much of a normal social life with her friends. We then see Efi in her two different kinds of school life, before she gets a mysterious email saying that she's been nominated for the Adawe Genius Grant, and she can apply. With this nomination from a mysterious stranger, Efi gets to work on her application, thinking very, very precisely as to her attire and deciding that Overwatch pyjamas probably wouldn't be appropriate. Now, so far, so Efi and Orisa's origin story. We know that she gets the grant, and she's actually on the way to the airport for a holiday to celebrate, to see Lucio in Brazil with her friends Nade and Hasana, as well as her parents, when Doomfist attacks Numbani Airport and takes the gauntlet. In the aftermath of this battle, which has an entire chapter devoted to it, Efi resolves that she wants to do something, and manages to obtain an OR-15 chassis, with the help of both local law enforcement and a friendly auction house Omnic. Construction begins, with Efi's friends contributing their various skills as the three race to try and get the robot working. In the meantime, Doomfist and Talon's activities around Numbani are increasing, with various strange things going on, in particular with the city's Omnic population. As Efi feels the pressure, she puts this pressure onto her friends too, causing an argument between the three which cause Nade and Hasana to leave her to finish Orisa herself. Efi finally gets Orisa online, and in quite a training montage style sequence, think of your 80s films, we see them out and about in Numbani trying to teach Orisa both the practical skills, the combat skills, and also the emotional and character skills to be a citizen of, a member of the Numbani community, and a protector of it too. Suffice to say, this doesn't all go to plan, with both Efi and Orisa learning a lot in a short period of time. Orisa is not physically ready either, she lacks key components. During this, she's already a prodigy, but Efi is catapulted into the spotlight, as both public attention on her hologram blog and support, and also pressure on her grows, as well as the financial pressure of repairing and mopping up after Orisa's mistakes. Her confidence in her work and relationships with her friends also suffer. Now, without going into too much detail, there are a couple of confrontations with Doomfist in the book. In the first, and as a result of the first, the friends reunite and resume work on Orisa. But after another accident during this time, Efi is not sure whether she can continue. She's already toyed with whether or not she should give Orisa emotional capacity, the ability to understand and to empathise, and actually turns this off at one point to see whether it will make her more logical, calculated, and perhaps make her performance better. In the midst of these worries, a call from Lucio comes up and an offer to collaborate. Naturally, the three friends, all massive fans of Lucio, are delighted, and we get to learn a bit more about Lucio as a person. Given that the proposed collaboration has to include Orisa, Efi is led to reconsider, reactivating Orisa, and as the big final show and collaborative project loom, we get to see whether Orisa and Efi can be the heroes that Numbani need. So that's the structure, that's the synopsis of the story and the main pieces of the plot. I've left a few little bits and details out there because the joy of them is in the reading and in the telling, and I'd really love you to enjoy this book and read it like I have. With The Hero of Numbani, to take a step back and to talk about it, we know the structure, and you know, if you're an Overwatch fan, the structure coming into this. We know Efi and Orisa's origin story. So therefore, a lot of the enjoyment of this book that I had, and that you will probably have too if you enjoy Overwatch Lore, is the discovery of the details and the relationships and the interaction of all the characters and the unveiling of the world along the way, which is why in this video I haven't gone into too many specific details, although I have done a half-hour long lore learnings video where there are a lot more details. You can find a link to that in the description below. So before we get stuck into the real details, a few things that I thought about what you may or may not like about this book, just to give you an idea. I think that if you're an Overwatch lore fan, if you're a fan of Overwatch, of the world and creativity around it, of course if you're a fan of Efi and Orisa, you'll love this book. I genuinely think you will. Now, a few things about what you may not like, or what, just to sort of set expectations, I would not be expecting this to be a big lore chronicle, something that exists for World of Warcraft. Now, there are people like part of me who would love to see just a big lore chronicle for Overwatch of if on this date this happened, and this is exactly how Mercy's healing beam works, and this is how Graviton Surge works, and every infinitesimal kind of detail and piece of backstory. This is not that for Efi, this is not that for Orisa. This is a story of the two, set around the two in Numbani. So, if you as a reader aren't a fan of young adult fiction, I would encourage you to give the excerpt a go. You can read the excerpt on the Overwatch website. It's the first chapter, and if you get on with that style of writing there, you will like the Hero of Numbani. No questions asked there. I say that in the sense of the book is very, very much Efi's story. It's Efi's story, it's her friend's story, it's her family's story, and then Overwatch characters that we know and love outside of these people come into it too, and a whole host of other characters before then. It's the story of Numbani and these people, and Efi and her relationship and her mentorship and friendship with her friends and Orisa too, and learning a lot about herself along the way. If the day-to-day lives and feelings of Efi, of people of her age in her situation, are not something that you feel you can read or not something that you're into, then this might not be the book for you. So that's a brief summary of the plot and what I think people may and may not like, just to set some expectations. So what did I think that the book did really, really well? Well, the characterization of both Efi, Orisa, her family, and the wider Overwatch characters that we meet was really, really awesome. As I've said, this is very much Efi's story. We see her insecurities, we see her trying to have fun and be a young adult of her particular age. We also see how she struggles to fit in a little bit until she's sort of happy within herself at her secondary school as well. She's very, very confident in some areas, she's not so confident in others, and as we see her very, very vast intellect and vast amount of robotic skill, we also see in a lot of day-to-day situations, in the way that she engages with her family, with her friends, and also even other people in the world when she's trying to build Orisa, that she is learning and she is growing as much as Orisa is too. Now, this is really important because to understand Orisa, you need to understand Efi, given that at least a third to a half of the book is before even Orisa is constructed and online, as it were. There are so many cool bits between Efi and Orisa. Orisa is an absolute joy. The relationship between Efi and Orisa, the way it builds, the way the two kind of teach each other, the hijinks that the two get up to are absolutely awesome and so much fun. It's all set against a backdrop of an increasing sort of Talon and Doomfist presence around Numbani, things going wrong with the city's Omnics. So there is this kind of escalating pressure where, although Orisa is online and Efi has managed to get her online, albeit actually at the short-term cost of her friendships. Her friends Nade and Hasana actually leave her just before Orisa is complete. They don't want to help anymore due to an argument that they will have. So against this backdrop, there's kind of increasing pressure. Efi does make it up with her friends, but then we're building and building and building towards what by the end of the story is kind of the showpiece finale, as it were. Character-wise, we also meet Lucio. Without giving away too much, he calls Efi due to a certain series of events, and the two end up working on a collaborative project together, including Orisa in that too. Fans of Lucio, you will love Lucio. He has a fair chunk of talking, he has a fair chunk of involvement in the second half of the book. He's a lot of fun. The characterization I really liked in this book alongside Efi, however, was Doomfist. He has a few monologues, a few speeches, a few conversations, both sort of to camera as he's wrecking havoc around Numbani, and then also to Efi and at various points. And it really fleshes out, develops his character, motivation. Only through conflict do we evolve, is taken and spun out into a way that also asks a few questions about where Overwatch lore might be going, and shows Doomfist's place in it. He really feels that he's an architect of change for the betterment and for the increased strength of humanity, and that he even himself feels that he is not the biggest threat to humanity. He feels that from his speeches that Omnics are a little bit more of a threat, but it's all done in such an eloquent and fitting but also creative way that I really like Doomfist in all of his interactions in this book in the main. So some really cool characterization there. Ife's parents are pretty cool too. Other little characters in the world come to life, and there's also focus on little details, right down to different Omnic pop and music groups. So a really nice cast of characters that I really enjoyed. There are so many ways I could describe this, but suffice to say the book links into the Overwatch universe in a really tight and fitting way without being too constrictive. Nikki Drayden has a lot of fun, I think, and she does a really good job in expanding and growing just what the world of Numbani and the world of Overwatch in this particular corner of the world would feel like to live in, to be a part of. It's things like from the Amazon-style drone network of delivery drones that can be summoned at the touch of a button, through to trams and the practicalities, through to the driverless cars and transportation, and a lot more beside. Just the everyday little details of how life are lived, right down to the little details in Ife's family's kitchen that I just really enjoy in all different kinds of ways. The links to the universe are great. Omnics and their relationship with the city are treated fantastically. Gabriella Darway as a name and as a figure comes into it a bunch in terms of her impact on the world, on Overwatch and the city. Overwatch themselves are mentioned a few times, but not in massive amounts, but always in a referential way. Ife, for example, is a big Overwatch fan, owning everything from a Reinhardt piggy bank right down to Overwatch pyjamas, and enjoying the cartoons, including Sojourn, one of her favourite heroes, when she was a little younger. So as an Overwatch fan, you'll be going through this book and you'll be reading through this world and just appreciating lots of little details, everything from Kofi Aromo, the layout of Numbani, various brands and shops that are name checked but dropped in not just as a nod, but in a way that actually sort of makes sense and is completely contextual of what the characters would say and how the world works. And that I really appreciate. It's kind of as if Numbani as a level has been taken and it's been sort of taken as a sketch and then expanded into a living, breathing world and painting with its own characters and its own bustle and hustle of the city and the day-to-day life. The book is also not afraid to tackle various issues. From profiteering on broken weaponry, there's a little passage about the OR-15s and how various businesses are trying to conceal how ineffective they were against Doomfist, maybe to get a better value for them. There is also a little bit of a discussion about law enforcement and its place alongside and around the community and society as well. There's a particularly interesting bit around the OR-15s when they're attempting to defend Numbani Airport from Doomfist, where they accidentally knock a lady over who's trying to run away and set themselves up, and Ife is struck at that particular moment as to why they don't seem to be sort of passionate or caring or empathetic in that kind of sense. And these are very much things that she wants for Orisa, to be able to help in the community and be part of the community in ways outside of keeping the peace, outside of law enforcement and similar things like that. And indeed in Orisa's training you see a lot of different examples of Ife doing things apart from how to apprehend a criminal and things like that. So particularly, not putting words in the author's mouth, but given the current conversations and situation in the world with Black Lives Matter and debates and discussions around the role of police, I just found that particularly interesting. It resonated to me anyway. Prejudice against Omnics and the relationship between Omnics and humans is discussed in many different ways. You do actually see a few examples of the older generation saying a few things that are occasionally, to Ife's ears, it seems inappropriate or in slightly bad taste. And outside of chunkier subjects, even just little analogies and references and nods to day-to-day life as well. I do love Hologram being this mixture of Patreon meets kind of Instagram that Ife shares all of her work on, and she has her followers, and she also uses it as a fundraising platform to make money for the Brantford arm for Orisa. So those are just a few examples of the areas and things that I really enjoyed, and I hope you will too. Here are a few things for balance that I found maybe a little bit funny. If this book, if this novel, if this story has a slight weakness, and I have to emphasize this was very minor for me, it's occasionally some of the places where there's a contrast between what we as an Overwatch lore fan or an Overwatch fan have seen for many hours in game, and attempts to translate that into something that someone who is not familiar with the Overwatch world, or even the characters maybe, would understand. Let me give you a couple of examples so you can see what I mean. There are a couple of times where there are just a couple of examples so you can see what I mean. There are a couple of times where there are attempts to explain how certain technology in the Overwatch world with regards to heroes and their weaponry actually works in universe, if that makes sense. And the two attempts that I remember are to do with Lucio and how his Amp It Up works with regards to rallying people who are fighting around him. The other one is to do with Orisa's supercharger. Now, it's worth emphasizing that in this book, where there is pretty much a completely blank slate, that Nicky Drayden does an awesome job of writing and describing how these things could work with robots, with Omnics, just in the world in general. So if there's just a blank slate, examples of this, the Branford arm, the miniature Tobolstein reactor, the fusion driver, and similar. These are all tied in and described and talked about in ways that make perfect sense. That, you know, even in a story sense, in a science fiction, speculative fiction sense, they work and they're really, really nice. And I really, really enjoyed them. A description of why a miniature reactor was needed and why Orisa couldn't have a certain different part, I really, really appreciated. So these are the two examples of Lucio's tech and of Orisa's supercharger, because Lucio actually helps tweak Orisa's supercharger a little bit. These kind of felt like there was an attempt to try and contextualize the visuals and the look and the action of the in-game abilities for someone who had never seen the world of Overwatch before. Now, bearing in mind that, of course, for a book like this, you want people to be picking up and reading it, maybe who haven't experienced the world of Overwatch before or played the game or see the abilities, then that kind of attempt at crossover is, I think, necessary and required. But it sometimes just jars a little bit, only in a couple of examples. Maybe it's because of me being not able to see the wood for the trees, loving Overwatch lore and the details of the world in the way that I do, and I'm sure many of you do as well. But that was just a little thing that sort of felt a little bit funny to me, some of those descriptions of abilities. Now, on those kind of things, I mean, I've made a 20-minute video in the past about how Mercy's tech might work in the future or in real life. So I love a nerdy speculative description or theory about loads of different things. But in this case, when I was reading these, I sort of thought, I guess in some ways, and I've got to back up from sort of content I've made before and things, sometimes a willing suspension of disbelief is quite nice. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, whether it's in the theatre or otherwise, it's the concept of being able to take a step back from the story and be happy to just accept that some things are a bit beyond understanding or a bit ridiculous in some ways, so that you can be immersed and enjoy yourself and enjoy the catharsis that comes afterwards. You can enjoy the experience and not have to sort of pick at every single detail, which might take you out of the moment, out of the world that the writer is trying to conjure, that the performers are trying to conjure for you. With these couple of examples, I just want to emphasise they didn't take me out of a willing suspension of disbelief. They were not big roadblocks that jarred me to a halt in my reading or appreciation of the story, but they were there. On these things, I almost think it would have been better to sort of go all in and try and create even more of a description as to how they worked, or perhaps just pull straight back, go for willing suspension of disbelief and just say, you know what, it works. Lucio wasn't going to tell how his technology worked, but he'd worked on it with his dad for absolutely ages, and sort of cover it in that kind of light way rather than perhaps go in the middle. The second thing, and again this was pretty minor, that occasionally jarred with me a little bit, was voice lines. Now this is going to sound really, really crazy coming from me, but suffice to say, Aoife, when she's working on Orisa, and it's mainly Orisa, Lucio and Doomfist, because of course Aoife doesn't have voice lines, but all three of those characters use their voice lines from game at various points during the book. For Orisa, this works. She's an Omnic, and to start with, she has stuff that's programmed, and she has replies. Then as her personality evolves, they drop in a little less, or they're a little bit more quirky. It all kind of works for Orisa. As for Lucio, he's quite a larger-than-life character in-game and in the way he's written anyway, so him dropping in his voice lines into the dialogue every now and then, it works. I occasionally just sort of sat there and had a little bit of sort of there it is, okay. But really where it kind of clashed a bit for me was Doomfist. And the reason for this, as I said before, is that Doomfist is so beautifully written otherwise that suddenly seeing a piece of his set-piece dialogue, and I'm not saying that the set-piece voice line dialogue is bad, Suddenly seeing a voice line that we've heard, probably if we played Overwatch so many times, pop into the middle of the book, just for Doomfist, feels a little bit jarring in a sense. Forced is perhaps the wrong word, but it certainly jarred a little bit, particularly for Doomfist when this happened. So for me, the story stands really, really well on its own feet anyway if you're not an Overwatch fan. And if you're not an Overwatch fan and haven't played the game and you read this book, I don't think you'd really notice because they're written in with the characters. Maybe it's just as Overwatch fans that they stick out and feel a little bit perhaps superfluous. I can only assume that with that in mind, for someone new to Overwatch, that this is a connection into the game, and that if someone then plays the game off the back of buying the book and reading the book, they will like these voice lines and recognise them and have another touch point to their original experience, and maybe that's the reason why they're in there. I really want to just stress again that for me, although I've talked about these 2 points a fair chunk, they were pretty minor for me in terms of enjoying the story. They were not big roadblocks. When I was reading a page or a paragraph, they didn't bring me to a jarring halt and take me out of my immersion. So there we have it. In conclusion, I love this book. I think if you enjoy Overwatch and the world of Overwatch, you will too. So give it a go. It wasn't too long a read. It was a great first outing into the first world of Overwatch. I hope Nikki Drayden gets to write more. I hope that more are written and that Overwatch and Blizzard work with more authors. And I hope that you, if you like the sound maybe of what you hear, will go and buy this at some. Thank you very much for watching. A bit of a different format with me on camera for a change. Do let me know what you think. Did you enjoy this? Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you read the book, comment away. I'd love to hear how you enjoyed it too. And if you're going to talk about more spoilers that I haven't mentioned in this or my other half-hour video, you can see linked here, then please do put a spoiler tag above it so people can try and avoid them. Big thanks to my patrons on Patreon, without whom a lot of my videos over the last 2 or 3 years, and indeed longer, since 5 years or so I've been making Overwatch content, just wouldn't exist, as well as all of the new stuff I've tried here about other Blizzard games and lore of other worlds, other universes outside of video games and beyond. And I'm going to be doing a lot more of that. The pilots that I promised, well, for quite some time, but in particular I mentioned a couple of months ago, are going to be coming up over the next 3 or 4 weeks. If you'd like to see how you can support the channel from just $1, £1 or coin to your Witcher a month, do check out patreon.com/Hammeh. It's being revamped right now. I'm going to be having a lot of chats about new content, and do spot some new content here and stay tuned for it in the coming weeks. All of my Overwatch content, lore, interactions and voice lines, I've been doing stuff on Valorant as well. There are going to be other games from Blizzard and other universes to come to, are all in these playlists here, and do throw a sub if you haven't already. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.